Well, the needle moved, at least in terms of Daryl's arc throughout the series now, as he must embrace that paternal side to him once more in an effort to save LaRon and himself.
Fuck yeah.
With just a prayer and a thought offered towards Izzy for making the sacrifice play, as the stakes have now truly been risen, with only 2 episodes remaining, but my concern is, does this show have enough momentum left to spin into a second season?
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
This week starts off with a cool little dream sequence that shows Daryl's inner turmoil over the safety of LaRon, and a possible moment of transcendence where maybe he is considering that the reality is that the boy could in fact be the human salvation.
Oh, save me, Jeebus!
But equally, it could be a reflection of his hesitation to embrace this mission that is blocking him from performing normally as a protector and being able to guard the lad appropriately. Though that could all be a reach and Daryl's mind could just be fucking with him, but once he's woken up, he remembers that he fell through the ceiling and almost drowned. And upon pulling himself out and battling off a few walkers, he stalks the streets in search of Izzy and LaRon. Meanwhile, Janae discovers Falu's community and confesses that the rumblings of LaRon bringing hope to many is a concern for her, and that she wants to keep her system of oppression in place, so demands that Cadron head out and find him and destroy him. And shortly after this, we see Daryl and Izzy reunite and head over to the Eiffel Tower, where the young Messiah has found trouble in a herd of walkers nestled underneath the ruins that begin to chase him right as the duo turn up to retrieve him. But in the chaos, LaRon is snagged by Quinn's men who get taken out by Daryl, but the driver makes off with him pretty quickly, and LaRon is delivered to Quinn, where he deduces who Quinn is to him and figures out his entire family tree, and shortly after, the lad makes an impression on Anna, seeing through her rough exterior and reaching her maternal side, which later serves to aid Daryl in the rescue of the boy.
Boy? No place for a boy.
And for Daryl to get inside, Falu and the gang create a diversion which serves to take out possibly the weakest security force I've seen for some time, and as Daryl goes to leave with LaRon, Quinn tries to tackle him down, but Daddy D gets the upper hand, returning the boy to Izzy, who chooses to let him go for now on his own with Daryl up to the nest. The final destination by the sounds of it for LaRon's journey, but to ensure that Janae and the cause are distracted while the boy makes this trek, Izzy chooses to stay with Quinn in an effort to protect LaRon, as she can use his leverage over Janae to misdirect her and her men.
Doesn't matter. There are only 4 rules you need to remember. Make the plan, execute the plan, expect the plan to go off the rails, throw away the plan.
So damn does this episode hit hard as we see Daryl unleashed this week, finally stepping up and realising he cannot escape himself or his situation without embracing the man he's become. Daryl seemed to be walking the tightrope regarding his position over LaRon's protection till now, but the lad has been thrown to the wolves, and whether Daryl believes in the saviour proclamation or not, he believes in the sanctity of innocence and giving young life the best chance for survival where possible. And while I personally think LaRon is rather annoying, and I can see the similarities of Ellie and Joel that everyone is talking about in these two, I definitely think that the chemistry is lacking to practically non-existent between Daryl and his young prodigy, reducing this relationship down to purely transactional at best right now. So I hold hope that that could at least shift to a second gear next episode and they become friends at least, but as it is right now, I'm more concerned about whether Daryl will escape France, and if Izzy will reunite with him given the subtle signs of affection that she shows for him here. Daryl proved to be an absolute beast in this, taking a more egregious approach to getting answers from the soldier, wiping out a good majority of the walkers under the Eiffel Tower, and almost taking the final swing with Quinn.
Acknowledge me!
This attitude right here is what Daryl developed towards the conclusion of season 11, and it helped him in battling against the Commonwealth and rescuing Judith, by ultimately finding something to fight for, and that's what Izzy is talking about at the start of the season. He's lost faith and he just needs to find that spark again, and we saw here what happens when he finds it, and he's nearly unstoppable. I think it would be interesting to see how much of the old Daryl we get for the remainder of the season, and how that could play into the final battle against the cause, but currently, I'm just happy to see our boy return true to form, almost delivering a Negan-style speech whilst relentlessly torturing someone and then callously leaving them as a prisoner to the walkers.
Bon appetit.
Comedy.
A moment that was delivered with comedic undertone, but I think I laughed a little more than I was meant to here. Though what this moment did tell us is possibly a tale from his youth titled Jimmy, that could either be referencing himself or someone that he once knew, but to me, I think this was about him, as the way Daryl was able to regale the soldier and Izzy in this tale was oddly specific, and he's never been known to be a storyteller. So to hear this and have him claim that it was bullshit later on makes me think that the Jimmy tale did happen and he wants to pretend that he didn't mention it now. now. And honestly, to be something that he could pull up almost instantaneously tells me that he knew of a Jimmy, or he was, as I said, Jimmy, which paints his past in a far darker tone if you consider that maybe Merle and his father were part of this as well.
This is a pretty hardcore origin story.
But the rough exterior aside, I did also enjoy seeing the compassionate side to him come back as well when it came to Antonio. Even though the action was a little late, Daryl might not have understood nor cared about what his connections to the pigeons were or meant to him, but the fact that he delivered on his final request and then mercifully ended him to prevent a turn is the man that we know, and I'm here for it. And overall, Daryl came back in this episode reminding me of what I've missed in this series so far, and we've got another 8 episodes currently to enjoy it, with the remaining 2 episodes here and the confirmed season 2 likely to be an additional 6 episodes.
Bring it on.
However, the long-standing tradition of our core group turning up to basically peaceful communities and inevitably dragging trouble with them has stayed true to form here, and it's a shame as Falu's community appeared to be almost a utopia before Janae and her forces stormed in. A point of which I found especially interesting, with a little more depth added to her character here in her actions as well as her dialogue. And specifically in her dialogue is when she's discussing the mere idea of Laurent and what he symbolises and how she wants him dead before his message can spread. And what this does is gives us a good understanding as to the hold that she has over Paris, its surrounding locations, and by association, its people currently. But if this is the case and Janae does have a stronghold on Paris, what does she control? How much does she manipulate? And is it likely that the burners that are spread around the country at this point are her doing and not one of natural evolution like the climbers from the main series? Based on where Daryl started the show and met the first burner to then meeting the nuns and travelling here, that's a considerable distance for Janae and the cause to be monitoring and dropping off various enhanced creatures from beyond. This, in my mind, points to a larger operation that Daryl may struggle to run up against, as Janae has power for now and a pool of resources that he's not prepared for. And what's worse is he's not aware of who he can trust here beyond Izzy's connections. And even they've proven to come with an advisory warning, so this does make things a lot more interesting and engaging for me. And the reason why is the cause could be one of 2 things here. Either an extension of the CRM that are operating under a different alias here, though let's be honest with the ego on them, I don't know why you wouldn't want people to know who you are globally, so that to me leaves the likeliest answer to be that they are another faction, looking to spread their grip over the world by weaponizing walkers, hoarding resources, and puppeting influential figures like Quinn, which in turn affects the people within their lands and forces them to conform to their ways or go into hiding. The latter of which is highly likely, given Cadron took one look at Laurent back in episode 1 and stated that he'll be taken for training and to become part of the cause's army, meaning that this idea takes on a darker meaning if we consider the possibility that Janae does have a hold over this land and is manipulating the people for her gain. She could be taking the children at a certain age and weaponizing them too, which could play into her actions here, offering some context for who she is, where she takes the young woman's baby and manages to calm it. This could indicate 2 things, with one based on this theory that she's weaponizing the people to grow her own forces, where she's monitoring certain areas for young children to be taken Jedi style and raised by herself and her soldiers in their developmental stages of learning to have nothing but a devotion to the cause. But on a more maternal level, the care that she showed for this Baba tells me at least that she could have been entrusted with the care of a child at one point in her life, most likely pre-outbreak, as she's rather attentive with it and drops almost the cold visage we've seen her stroll around with thus far, maybe indicating that she was either a mother or an auntie before and lost someone that she greatly cared for, which in a wild piece of speculation could align with Izzy's story, only her path took a darker turn, where she'd lost her loved one and the child too, and it put her on this path to become essentially a warlord. This theory is admittedly out there, but that's the fun of being a reviewer, is taking a moment to indulge in ludicrous notions and seeing how far that string you cast catches on to something.
Good times.
But what this collectively tells us is the danger that Daryl, Izzy and the others are in, when you consider how desperate the cause are to track down Daryl and stop Laurent, just in the hopes of quelling belief. And if Daryl remembers what they were up to and what he escaped from, that information could bring more trouble to their door than they might like.
Knock, knock!
Who's there? That door!
Anyway though, the final mention for this goes to Izzy. She proved to be deeper than we thought in this, where her own self-interests and desires were noticeable but don't carry importance to her above her own objective, despite how much she'd like to act on them, and what was pointed out by Sylvie tells us what she wants as well. I think what Izzy is searching for is a future, stability and certainty at this point, and the belief is that she could find that with Daryl, a man who possesses strength, resolve, morals and loyalty, everything that Quinn never did, a man who seemed to give her equally longing looks and closing minutes, and if we look back to the last episode too, and the information we received here, she has definitely developed feelings for him. I'm all for this relationship blossoming and giving Daryl a future too, which was the question to close us on the flagship series, but also open us up into this series as well. Izzy is an equally tortured but generous soul who works to protect others above herself, given her actions at the end here to stay with Quinn and give them a head start. The pair are practically perfect for each other, and I'd take this over Daryl and Leah any day, although Daryl and Connie was certainly a missed opportunity. But what I appreciate with this little love story is that it isn't compromising the narrative or their respective arcs. Daryl and Izzy have all but confessed their feelings for each other and still choose the mission before themselves. This, I think, is a good balance between what the story wants to tell us and what it needs to tell us, and if the writing can maintain itself, that'll be helpful to say the least, as it saves their relationship for after the war is done, and in likely Walking Dead fashion, snatch it from them in the final seconds.
Ugh, you're the worst.
But as for my closing thoughts on this episode, there were elements that didn't work for me. Like the mixed writing of Ron, who the writers want to tell us is a rather perceptive and intelligent young lad, was shown here to stupidly venture out into a world when he knows nothing of how to confront it, and then later is shown to prove Quinn wrong in revealing how much he does understand. The lack of information of what's transpired between Daryl and the cause is starting to frustrate me as well now, as I want to understand what occurred for her to have such a vengeful fury against him. Anna proved to be more complex than we realised in this, willingly letting Ron and Daryl go, and since her debut has been presented as a compassionate woman led astray by Quinn, and seemingly can't leave him for some reason, which is another facet to the story I'd love to understand, as it appears Quinn may have something over her for her to constantly put up with his abuse and still stay, despite the idea that she might actually be in love with him as well. And the fight sequence under the Eiffel Tower was presented as more of a spectacle than I think it translated as the combat seemed rather awkward and staged in places, like the choreography was peeking through. This should have been a more intense and desperate affair, but the editing and visuals did little to support that. And lastly, the dream sequence was interesting for the insight it gives us on Daryl, but the presentation of it made it feel more important than I think it went on to be. But we'll see how this might carry over for the rest of this voyage. But overall, I had fun with this episode, but I can't help but feel that it's pushing the plot forward at a rate that feels unconcerned, like it's moving out of necessity rather than it wants to explore it further. I might not have explained that particularly well, as I can't really pinpoint what it is, but the energy felt off in this installment, like it didn't want to move forward just yet. And as it sits now over the halfway point of this series, I have to believe that we're headed somewhere with this story, but right now, I don't know if this has the strength to enter a second season. But I try to judge the series based on the merits of what I see week to week, so we never know what turns this could take. This might just be me though, but we'll see where we are next week. Anyway though, that's it for now. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you like this, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe for the remainder of this season's coverage, and until next week everyone, take care, and I'll catch you later.